Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. I'm Daita Sergi, Education Programs Manager with HE, and I'll be the moderator today. I'm also a liaison to the Higher Education Association Sustainability Consortium, or HEASC, who is a co-organizer of this webinar. So, as many of you know, HE's mission is to inspire and catalyze higher education to lead the global sustainability transformation. We are an international association with about 1,000 members spread across more than 20 countries, including Colombia and South Africa. We serve as the professional home for campus sustainability staff, but we offer resources for everyone in higher education. We provide an expansive collection of online resources, networking tools, and educational events, such as today's webinar, as well as an annual conference and expo, which will take place this year online from October 20th to the 22nd. By going virtual, we have the opportunity to expand our engagement to campuses and organizations throughout the world with a much smaller footprint. This transition also enables us to more fully enact our values and expand the breadth and depth of our education offerings. Registration is open, and I hope you will join us at the conference in October. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone in the audience is on mute, but please feel free to ask questions or provide comments at any point during the presentation. You can do that by typing your questions or comments in the questions pane on the control panel on your screen. If you have additional questions, please email them to education@he.org and we will get back to you. At the end of the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback regarding today's presentation. And let's see what happened to my slide here. So at the end of the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback regarding today's presentation. We take your suggestions into account when planning for future webinars, so please do provide this feedback. Please note this webinar is being recorded. If you experience technical difficulties or have to leave early, you and others can view the recording later. The recording with the slides will be available in the Campus Sustainability Hub after the live broadcast. Before we start today's webinar, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about HEASC, a network of 13 higher education associations. My computer is really acting up today, and I do not know why it's doing that, but I apologize for this issue. So let's go back to HEASC. This network of associations has a commitment of advancing sustainability within their constituencies and within the entire sector of higher education. These are professional associations of college universities presidents, chief academic officers, business officers, student affairs, recreation, safety officers, and so on. And HE serves as the coordinating body for HEASC. Today's webinar is offered to you as an initiative of HEASC. At this time, I'd also like to introduce today's presenter. Star has a background in wildlife biology and ecology, and she spent nearly a decade as a research professional in conservation-driven research at the University of Georgia. Then she joined the Office of Research Safety as a chemical safety specialist, and during this time, she developed and advocated for a Green Lab program at the University of Georgia. In 2016, the program was created, and Star is the Green Labs program coordinator. More information about Star is found on the HE website under this webinar listing. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, and thank you for joining us today. At this time, I'd like to turn over to Star to get us started.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, Daita, and see if we can get this going. Well, all I see is myself. That doesn't really help anyone. All right, let's do this. Can you see my slides?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right, great. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining me today to talk about the intersection of safety and sustainability. This talk today is to start a conversation, and I welcome your feedback. I welcome your stories. These are really powerful. So let's share those and keep building upon this. And then reach out to me at the end. Let me know what I get right. Let me know what we need to investigate a little bit deeper. And the purpose of this talk today is to talk about the differences between safety and sustainability and the overlap, and how these are two sides of the same coin. And so the purpose is to try and bring us all together. So before we get going, I just want to give a land acknowledgement. This webinar today is coming to you from Athens, Georgia, where I just want to take a moment to honor our indigenous nations of the Cherokee and Muskogee Creek Indians. So I know for many of you, this land acknowledgement is something you see all the time, but today's talk has a lot of different types of people in it, a lot of different professions and disciplines. So I might be explaining some things today that you already know. So with that, I want to explain why we do a land acknowledgement. So it's about respect. And it is within our responsibility as an academic institution to disseminate knowledge about Native peoples. This is also consistent with our university's commitment to diversity and inclusion. And for me, this is about honoring those who have come before us and an appreciation for the territories that we're residing on. All right, so the learning objectives for today's talk is to take a deeper look into the psychologies and semantics and accompanying narratives of safety and sustainability. So I want to talk about the relationship between these two groups and how they fit together, and learn how to use this gain insight to our advantage. So how can we better communicate with each other and with our stakeholders? I want to be able to describe functional and dysfunctional interactions and help you to be able to do so as well. And then I also want to take a deeper look into how social justice falls within the purview of both safety and sustainability. So just to get us going, you know, webinars are weird because I can't read the audience. I have no idea what you're doing. You're probably in your pajamas right now. So let's get started with just a quick poll and try and figure out who's on the call. Daita, if you don't mind running that first poll question. So this is, how do you self-identify? As a safety professional, as a sustainability professional, neither or both? And I know we have a lot of different kinds of people, so I'm not sure if you can see the poll right now.
Yes, it's going for our audience, and most of our members have voted. So I'll give it maybe a couple more seconds so that everyone has a chance to pick a choice. And I'll go ahead and close the poll now. So we have 57% sustainability professionals, 17 are safety professionals, neither at 16, and both at 9%. So back to you.
Awesome. All right, great, you guys. Okay, let's go back to this screen. All right, are you seeing my slides again? All right. So I just want to talk about why I'm giving this talk. It's something super interesting to me, and it is subjective in many ways, but it's highly relevant. And more importantly, it's useful in creating desired outcomes. So to tell you a little bit about my background, this blonde girl with the hippie shirt, that is me in Yellowstone. So I've been an activist pretty much my whole life. I am a scientist with a background in wildlife biology and ecology, and I worked in conservation-driven research for about a decade. I also have worked as a safety professional and as a chemical safety specialist. You'll see, and I'm HAZWOPER trained, so you see these pink hazmat boots right there are the only pink hazmat boots in Athens, Clark County. You'll know that's me. So as a scientist and a safety professional, I understand things like regulatory compliance and the unique considerations required by our research environments. But as an environmentalist and a Green Labs professional and someone who cares so much about sustainability and wants to make the research enterprise more sustainable, I also understand creative programs to create positive change and thinking outside the box, and also the dire state of our environment for ecosystem threats and also social injustices. So I've often felt split between these two worlds of safety and sustainability, and I also have often felt like I had to be the interpreter between the two. And so this talk is about sharing those insights more broadly. And these two groups haven't always seen eye to eye, and we want to kind of look at that and figure out why that is. All right, so if we get into the psychology of safety, I want you to think about an EH&S professional that you know, a safety professional you know. And this is Hope Thomas. She's an industrial hygienist in facilities at the University of Georgia. But the safety professional you know, think about that person in your head. And then this person is, safety is prevention focused. Okay, so this is a term used by psychologists to describe a personality attribute that predicts performance. And we're going to talk a lot more about this in a little bit, but for now, what you need to know is they're motivated by a desire not to lose. All right, so avoiding risk is their primary motivator. And then the framework of safety is based on regulatory compliance. So it's mandatory, it's not optional. We usually have standard operating procedures. And then there are repercussions if you don't follow those procedures and if you don't maintain compliance. So those repercussions can be things like being fined or fired or incarcerated or even injury or death if you're not careful. So, you know what? I do want to take one moment and say, today's talk, I'm painting in very broad strokes. And that's not real life, right? But I'm doing this intentionally today. And the reason is it's for the purpose of more clearly defining and understanding the concepts I'm sharing. So I know people are going to come back and say, well, I feel like I'm a blend. You are. We all are. But these kind of broad strokes are to help us understand these concepts. All right. So if we look at the language of safety, and here is Kimmy Brown from University of Pennsylvania, one of my favorite safety people. The language of safety is regulatory. So it's objective, hopefully it's very clear, it's strong. Sometimes it can feel a little threatening or intimidating. So if you don't do this, then ... kind of mentality. So it can be perceived by stakeholders as the whip. So if you don't do something, there's going to be a repercussion. And for safety, it involves a tremendous amount of unseen effort. So if you haven't heard any news about your EH&S people at your institution lately, it's because they are hard at work keeping you safe. So we only hear about them once something goes wrong, right? So in the world of safety, no news is good news. And it means that your safety team has been hard at work keeping your institution safe. So if we move to the psychology of sustainability, I want you to think about a sustainability professional you know. So this is Kelly Weisinger from Emory University, one of my favorite sustainability professionals. And sustainability tends to be promotion focused. So this is a term used by psychologists to describe a personality attribute that predicts performance. And these individuals are motivated by advancement and by rewards. So again, we're going to talk more about motivational focus in a second, but what you need to know right now is they are motivated by advancement. All right, and then it uses an opportunistic framework. So this is an incentive, it's often, or maybe usually, incentive based. So there's going to be a reward offered for engagement. A lot of times it's optional, so you don't have to do it. It's often intrinsically motivated. So maybe we self-identify in a certain way, and so we have the opportunity to reinforce a self-identity. So, and that's one of the rewards. There are rewards with sustainability, the psychology of sustainability. Those rewards can be validating your identity. They can be saving resources or getting positive recognition for engagement. Oops, I don't know what I did. All right, here we go. So if we look at the language of sustainability, it's much more opportunistic than the language of safety. So it tends to be softer. more subjective at times, encouraging, and congratulatory. So stakeholders perceive sustainability more as the carrot. So if you do something, then there's a reward, not a repercussion usually. And then small efforts are recognized here. So this is the I2SL University Alliance Group led up here by Kathy Ramirez Aguilera in the front, who was a total rock star. Everyone in this picture is like my favorite people. But okay, so this is, you're starting to feel the difference between these two professions and these two disciplines. NIOSH had this blog a few years ago that was really funny. It was called Asking Safety to the Prom. And I'm going to read you part of it because it's funny. And they were moving towards this exact determination and distinction we're trying to create here today. So it says, positive emotional experiences influence behavior. Unfortunately, safety tends to be viewed as a Debbie Downer. So if you met safety at a party, your conversation might go something like this. You, whoa, safety, I didn't see you over there. So, you know, how's it going? Safety, well, no one suffered a debilitating injury for a while, so I've got that going for me. Insert sad trombone. So I think it's just funny, but right, so safety messages tend to focus on not getting hurt or avoiding fines, and sustainability has managed to capitalize on the positive in a lot of ways. All right, so if we look at motivational focus, all right, so this is promotion focus individuals. All right, motivational focus affects how we approach life's challenges and life's demands. So this is a term used by psychologists to describe a personality attribute that predicts performance. So promotion focused individuals are going to work quickly. They're great brainstormers. They're open to new opportunities. They tend to be optimists. They seek positive feedback and they lose steam without it. And when things go wrong, they feel depressed. The worst case scenario for a promotion focused individual is a failure to advance. So this doesn't necessarily mean in terms of hierarchy within an institution. It means advance towards the goal or the initiative at hand, whether that's clean energy or whether that's reducing our footprint, whatever that is. So if we look at prevention focused individuals, so our safety individuals, they're going to work more slowly, but with a much higher accuracy. They tend to be prepared for the worst and stick to tried and true ways of doing things. So they're often uncomfortable with praise or optimism. And when things go wrong, they feel anxious. So promotion, when something goes wrong, they feel depressed. For prevention-focused individuals, when something goes wrong, they feel anxious. All right, so that's an important distinction to make. Okay, so promotion-focused individuals, they generate a lot of ideas, like good and bad, but they generate a ton of ideas. But it often takes a prevention-focused individual to help sift through them and tell them which ones are the keepers. And we're all usually a mix of motivational focus, though everyone has a dominant motivational focus. So again, we're painting in broad strokes today for the purpose of more clearly defining these concepts. But motivational focus impacts everything we pay attention to. It impacts what we value, how we feel when we succeed or fail, and understanding what category we're in and what category those that we are interfacing with are in can make all the difference in coming together and collaborating more effectively. So this research was done by Drs. Heidi Grant Halverson and Tori Higgins. They're at Columbia. I would encourage you to write this down and read more about motivational focus, because not only can we apply it to safety and sustainability, but it can be applied so broadly in so many different disciplines and be very helpful. So as humans, we use storytelling as a tool, as a tool. So, but different people need different types of stories. So for a promotion-focused individual, they are more engaged when they hear a story about an inspirational role model. So someone who is really high performing or uniquely effective in some way, that is really going to float the boat for promotion focused individuals. For prevention focused individuals, they're impressed more by a strong cautionary tale about someone whose paths they shouldn't follow, because thinking about avoiding mistakes feels right to the prevention focused individual. All right, so I want to move into the second poll data. And this is, just based on the information you just heard, what do you think that your dominant motivational focus is? Is that promotion focus, prevention focus, or can't decide? Not quite sure yet.
Okay, let's give it a couple more seconds so that almost everyone has a chance to input their choices. And I will go ahead and close the poll. So let's see. 44% at promotion focused, 32 at prevention focused, and 24 can't decide. So back to you, Star.
Okay, awesome. All right, that's really good information, you guys. I love how, I just love the diversity on this call. So thank you so much for everyone being here. Okay, so I want to move to talk about the concept of framing. So how we frame messaging, it is so important. And in order to do that, I want you to engage in this exercise with me. So say COVID's over, you're free, you are on a nice vacation in Edinburgh, Scotland, and you have just bought yourself the most amazing cup of coffee, whatever that is to you. Actually, I just thought about this. For a lot of our safety folks, I feel like that's like a really strong black cup of coffee, right? Like really intense. But all right, but say that you're strolling down this street with your triple venti mochaccino with whip or whatever it is that floats your boat, and you come across this store, the whiskey, cigar, and cacao merchant. And you feel the heavens open up and you think, oh my God, I'm so excited to walk in this store. And here you are sauntering towards this store and bam, no food or drinks allowed. That's the sign you see. Okay, how does that make you feel? So just take a second. Do you feel that in your body anywhere? Did you have an emotional response to that? So here you are with the quandary of your gorgeous, amazing coffee that just made you super happy versus this incredible store. Okay. All right, now clear your slate. Imagine you're still walking, sauntering down this road in Scotland with your, triple venti mochaccino with whip, and you come up to the store, you're excited to walk in, and you see this sign. Please enjoy your drink outside. How does that make you feel? Right? It's different. So we have to think of all the ways that we experience framing and how it affects our perceptions and our attitudes. So we got the exact same outcome by using two very different techniques here. So we can use these varied semantics and convey the same messaging and achieve the same outcome. And we can gauge this based on who it is that we are talking to. So if we're engaging stakeholders on campus, then we can borrow from one another's messaging to be more effective in creating our desired outcomes. And we see this all the time in marketing. So that house up the street from you is not a dump, it's a fixer-upper. The house down the street from you is not old, it's charming. If you're in the South, your fried chicken isn't overcooked, it's just extra crispy. And if you're in COVID, you're not an alcoholic, you're just a lush, right? So there's a lot of different ways that messaging, that framing our messages impacts how they are received. Okay, So to talk about the relationship between safety and sustainability, I first want to define sustainability. I know this is old hat for a lot of you guys. So sustainability has people, planet, and profits. And we also define it as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, so at its core, sustainability is about conserving resources. Okay, this all makes sense to us. We already know this. All right, but let's define safety. So environmental health and safety stands for environmental health and safety is a general term used to refer to laws, rules, regulations, practices to protect the health and safety of employees and the public, as well as the environment, from hazards associated with the workplace. And then taking care of your employees sustains your business and protects your profits. So people, planet, and profits. This is sounding really familiar, right? So at its core, safety is about conserving resources. And the most sustainable thing in our organization, you guys, is our people. Taking care of our employees sustains our businesses. Okay, so safety is actually a part of sustainability. I threw this in there for you guys who are kids of the 80s. Occupational safety and health fits squarely within the social responsibility component of sustainability. So the goals of safety are 100% aligned with the serious sustainability strategy. And in Safety and Health's 2018 Job Outlook survey, 59% of respondents said that sustainability was actually a part of the safety and health function at their organization. All right, so we are talking about two sides of the exact same coin. We have safety, we have sustainability. They may have different languages, different semantics, different framing, different motivations, but they are two sides of one coin. So they're often pushing the same outcome, but they're using these different narratives to do so. And this webinar is not about changing your goals or changing your focus. It's just about working smarter and harder and borrowing from one another's messaging. And this also builds bridges with other stakeholders. So you start to appreciate that they have things you don't and vice versa. So if one approach isn't working, see if you can combine techniques, try a different motivator, and we can be more efficient and yield better results. So when combining these efforts, we both become more powerful, and more effective. Okay, I want to give you some examples here. I am focused on research sustainability, so a lot of my examples you'll see are within the research lab. This is a chemical fume hood for those of you who may not be familiar with this equipment. It removes hazardous vapors from the laboratory environment by sucking air out of this spot here and out a stack that goes out the roof of the building. So effectively, it's just removing conditioned air and just throwing it out a stack on the top of the building. So this sash right here that you'll see in front of this researcher, this is a piece of glass that moves up and down. So we call this the sash. And both safety and sustainability want you to close this sash. And so they have very different approaches though for doing that. So if safety comes in and they want you to close your fume hood sash, they might say, hey, these units protect users from harmful vapors by ventilating lab air out of the building. They might say it's a great engineering control to keep vapors out of your breathing zone. And they're going to tell you lowering the sash provides a physical barrier to improve safety and protect you from splashes and spills. They also might say something like, you must comply. It's in the lab safety handbook. And in rare situations, this is going to be highly effective. Okay, but in most cases, researchers will nod at us and then just go about their work, right? So a sustainability professional also wants you to shut the sash, and they're going to come in and they might say, did you know a single fume hood can use as much energy in a year as 3.5 American households? Did you know in 3 minutes, this fume hood is going to remove enough conditioned air to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool? And they also might say for variable air volume hoods, if you'll simply lower that sash, you're going to save 40% the energy. So if you identify as someone who cares about the environment, you are going to be excited because you have an opportunity to reinforce a self-identity by shutting the sash. So you appreciate that opportunity to do so. All right, and then if we look to green chemistry, which is, for those of you who may not be familiar, green chemistry means you're just replacing a more hazardous chemical with a less hazardous chemical that's equally effective. So safety may come in the room and they're going to say, all right, green chemistry helps uphold OSHA Laboratory Chemical Hygiene Plan CFR 1910.1450. It's a great administrative control. It's going to improve worker safety by reducing hazardous chemical exposure risk. It's going to improve room safety by reducing hazardous waste generated. So a lot of good reasons on that, on the safety side. Well, sustainability also wants you to engage in green chemistry, but they might use different messaging. They might say, well, green chemistry reduces hazardous waste. It prevents pollution at a molecular level. It results in source reduction because it prevents the generation of pollution. It reduces the negative impacts of chemicals on human health and the environment. And it minimizes our social justice impacts. It's less toxic to organisms. It's less damaging to ecosystems. So are you ever sitting there and maybe, like, let's say you're eating French fries and your dog comes up and wants a French fry and you say, no, baby, you can't have this because this is bad for you. But then you just keep on eating the French fries. Well, sometimes we are better motivated by protecting others than we are ourselves. So it doesn't always make sense, but it happens. So knowing how to, knowing what is motivating an individual will help you be more effective in getting your desired outcome. All right. So here's a quote from Tom Briggs, who's the former president of SHEMA. So SHEMA is the Campus Safety Health Environmental Management Association, if you're not familiar. So SHEMA is for safety what HE is for sustainability, or I2SL is for laboratory research, sustainability. So he says, much of what I see in EH&S professionals is learned behavior from trying to survive the culture they're in. Now, this is a really interesting concept because what he's saying is a person can have a certain training, they can have a certain goal, and they can hold themselves to a certain way of proceeding with their work, but they may not be able to carry that out if the culture they're in does not support that. So when we look at how safety and sustainability come together, we also have to consider the culture of the profession. We have to consider the culture of the institution, as well as the culture of the programs. So if we take a kind of closer look at the types of programs, and you guys, this is research that we've been gathering and doing. And if you have thoughts on this, if you think that we're lacking something here, write me, let me know. Let's engage in this discussion. Let's add to this, because the point here is to create information to bring these groups together. All right, so if we look at EH&S programs, we find dysfunctional EH&S programs in academic settings that are perpetually underfunded and where everyone is expected to do everything. We find prescriptive EH&S programs where there's an antagonistic culture. So this ends up with a lot of box checking, basically, kind of a CYA approach to make sure you're covered. And then progressive programs are really only possible in collaborative cultures. All right, this is a good one. I love this one. So these types of programs, they have much more collaboration between EH&S, facilities, and the research community and sustainability. I think a phenomenal model for progressive this progressive program is the CU Boulder group. They have amazing collaboration with the other stakeholders on campus. All right, and then if we look at different types of sustainability programs, in the technical program, you're going to find maybe all engineers or mainly engineers. They're going to be focused on reducing energy costs, improving supply chains and waste stream management. It can be somewhat narrow focused, and it is highly integrated with facilities efforts. Okay, the outreach program is student driven with feel good projects that tend to lack in hard metrics to measure success, but they have great visibility. And they're great for finding and creating change agents, which we all know is so important, so important. So, excuse me, these projects happen at a student level, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of facilities involvement. Now, a progressive sustainability program is going to be a combination of facilities efforts and student outreach and feel-good projects. So when we start laying it out like this, then we have other questions that come up, right? So can qualitative sustainability programs effectively interact with quantitative EH&S programs? All right, so these are kind of some of the questions. You see how this is growing now, right? I hope so. I can't see your faces, so I hope this is making sense. All right, we are going to skip this question because I just want to be mindful of our time. But I want to talk about real quick. In 2018, we tried to dig a little bit deeper into this relationship between safety and sustainability. And we surveyed the body of the Campus Safety, Health, Environmental Management Association. So we wanted to understand how these safety professionals thought about sustainability. So we just asked them, like, how do you define it? And we gave them these options. We said, check anything you think is true. So protecting the environment was certainly 68% agreed on that one. I'm unmuted now. Okay, good. Sorry. We saw that 91% said, yes, we agree that ensuring the needs of today are met without harming the ability of future generations to meet their needs. It's 91%. Reducing, using, and recycling, 72% said, yeah, that sounds like that sustainability. Okay, and then we said ensuring fair distribution and efficient allocation of resources. And it dropped way down, drops to 40%. I'm not quite sure on that one. And then we said promoting social equity, and it dropped way down again to 21%. So you see how this is becoming less clear as we move away from environmental protection. Okay, so we asked the following question to gauge personal values. We said, I believe it's important to support sustainability initiatives. And most agreed or somewhat agreed. We have a few down here at the bottom, 1% that strongly disagreed. Not sure what kind of day they were having, but we'll just let that one go for now. All right. And then we said, what statement best reflects your professional values regarding sustainability and safety? Okay, so they said, sustainability initiatives generally have a positive impact on safety at my institution. That was 50%, 51%. They have a negative impact. 7%, 7.5% said they have a negative impact on safety. Okay, and then 40% said, oh, they're independent, they're not related at all. So what we want to do right now is kind of look towards this 7%, look towards this 40%, and figure out what's going on there. All right. So then we said, do your EH&S departments collaborate on sustainability projects? We had some that said yes, successfully, some that said yes, but there's room for improvement, and then others that about 15% that said no, we don't work together, and 6% that said no, but we're about to. Okay, so if we want to get back to this 7% right here, and kind of figure out what's going on with this, because these kind of ideas don't come from nowhere, right? So someone's had an experience that has driven them to perception or a belief about a different group. And in order for us to move forward and work together well, we have to understand where did these perceptions come from and what can we do to resolve them. So we got a few additional comments that I thought were interesting. EH&S professionals at my institution have a perception of sustainability professionals as dilettantes, getting paid the same amount running the bike program or community garden as a biosafety specialist does. The university might value those two positions the same, but we do not. Okay, ouch. All right, the second comment, EH&S and sustainability collaborate frequently at my institution. That being said, the last thing we need is yet another organization talking about sustainability. Okay. And then we said there's an existing attitude among EH&S professionals that sustainability gets in the way of safety. Okay, so now we're really getting to something, right? This is something we need to look at. What are you talking about there? All right, so then there's so much benefit that can result from safety and sustainability working together. We have seen that on our campus. In fact, in the world of social psychology and behavior change, community-based social marketing is quite useful for both safety and sustainability. Okay, and just as a side note, Christina Griever gave a phenomenal talk about this a few years ago at the International Institute for Sustainable Laboratories conference. So you might want to try and check that out. Okay, so where do those comments come from? Where do those attitudes come from? And what we really need now is a survey polling sustainability professionals about their interactions with safety. So this is something that we're going to do moving forward and try and kind of fill out these data some. All right. So if we look at a few case studies, I know we're pressing time, so I may skip a couple, but sometimes in higher ed we have really well-meaning sustainability workers who rush into a regulatory space without knowing what they don't know. And so we've seen this when it comes to RCRA concerns for recycling in research laboratories. So this is the Resource Conservation Recovery Act. This is the EPA's determination for hazardous waste guidelines. So in this case, we see if you have a hazardous waste container, sorry, my dog is distracting me. If you have a hazardous waste container and you're trying to recycle that, you can't put that in single stream recycling because that actually, the container itself could be considered a hazardous waste depending on the hazard class of the chemical. So this is where we really need to talk to one another between safety and sustainability. There was a big move a handful of years ago to move to energy efficient traffic lights. And cities around the country, they basically installed energy efficient traffic lights because the bulbs save 90% the energy than the old incandescent variety, and they last for far longer, and they save tons of money. So we saw all these cities replace their traffic lights, but what they didn't think about was that their great advantage was also their drawback. So they don't waste energy by producing heat. And what happened was that in northern climates where the snow began to and the ice began to accumulate on traffic lights, the bulbs didn't burn hot enough to melt the snow, and they became crusted over in storms and became a big problem. There was dozens of accidents and at least one death that was related to this. So these are examples of why safety and sustainability need to collaborate. We need to have a voice with one another. In 2011, United Rentals did a massive lighting retrofit. They moved to energy efficient LED lighting to save energy, and thus actually ended up providing workers with way better lighting. And because of that, they saw reduced injury rates, brighter lights, and safer conditions. So that's an interesting thing. And then also with the UGA Green Lab program, the ability to, we were able to acquire our program by focusing on a lot of the ways in which it was going to improve upon our research safety at our institution. Okay, so what now? All right, well, we need more communication, we need more case studies, we need to be more conscientious, be more helpful. We need to work against false negatives, and we need more collaboration with these groups. And in my opinion, sustainability needs to give safety a voice from the start, but they can only do that if safety remains open-minded and not obstructionist. So it's really important, and it's a trust-building exercise. All right, so we have some time left. I really want to move and talk about social justice in higher education. So we have a responsibility to review the impacts of higher ed in all capacities, including the impacts on social justice, both positive and negative. We need to continue to use the framework of who benefits and who bears the burden. So we can't mitigate our impact without first acknowledging that we have one. All right, so, okay. In the wake of the current national groundswell for equity and justice, and in the face of rampant inequality against people of color, we must acknowledge holistic actions that are needed to solve systemic societal problems that cause racial disparities. So this section was inspired by racial justice and the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening right now. But we can't talk about racial justice without talking about environmental justice and then the broader concepts of social justice. So if we look at the basic principles of social justice being access, equity, rights, participation, we need to review how those in higher ed come together. So some things that we might want to look out for are, do we have institutionalized racism at our institutions? Are there buildings or monuments that are named after controversial figures that are actually normalizing racism within our higher ed structures? Do institutional policies consider the basic principles of social justice? What's the history of land acquisition for your institution? And then if we look at waste management, so of course plastic is a major social justice issue, as is hazardous waste disposal. And then also we have to look at the sourcing of materials. So I put a pair of nitrile gloves here. I know our campuses use millions, I don't know, probably millions of pairs of nitrile gloves a year. And nitrile gloves are manufactured using palm oil kernel as the fuel source for the manufacturing. And if you don't know about the social and environmental crisis surrounding palm oil, you might want to research that later. But the sourcing of raw materials and production conditions really matters. And we really have to incorporate this when we're reviewing our role of social justice in higher ed. So from support for undocumented or underrepresented or marginalized students to related issues of access and student health and increasing costs, we must remain vigilant in our pursuit of social justice. So we as higher education leaders, we're obliged to question whether we consistently practice equity and fairness in every aspect of our college and university life. So our capacity to examine our environments, our decisions, our policies, our perspectives, our budgets, our space allocations, our campus climates, and other areas with an eye for how it affects all members of our college campus. This is what will help us make best decisions as leaders. And notably, the guiding principle here is equity, not equality. Equity really removes that broad stroke of sameness that might be applied more superficially by equality, and it substitutes the more fine-tuned need for justice in decision-making processes. So we know that these are considerations that we need to take in higher ed, but whose responsibility is this to address and mitigate this? All right, so we know that social justice is a clear component of sustainability. We've already looked at this definition earlier. We know that in the UN Sustainable Development Goals that social justice is represented there. So we know that social justice is a part of sustainability, and most sustainability professionals and departments are already having these discussions. But what about safety? So, all right, this is where This is where it gets a little muddier, a little less clear. So we need to further examine the relationship between safety and social justice. I just put this definition back up there so you guys could kind of be reminded of this. But most safety professionals really care about social justice. They just aren't sure what their professional role is in addressing it. So I wanted to kind of walk us through that. How can we as safety professionals connect with social justice? And our entry point here is environmental health. This we already know that we have a responsibility for and to. So this is one of the easiest places to get into this. If you're a safety professional and you want to access this, this is a book, Social Injustice and Public Health by Levy and Seidel. It has an entire chapter on social justice and environmental health as it pertains to water and pollution, food, persistent organic pollutants, climate change, Superfund has waste sites, and most safety professionals on college campuses already recognize environmental health. That is absolutely what they do. Okay, so but if we take it a little bit further, okay, so that was our entry point, but what's our next step? Well, let's look at social justice and workplace safety. So we know work profoundly defines the well-being of individuals and populations, but we have to look at something called workplace democracy. So this is supporting an environment where all employees have a voice, as well as job security, which would allow workers to be more insistent in demanding safer working conditions. So this is about a psychological safety and knowing that they have your support. And the EH&S world, we are going to refer to this as stop work authority. So do individuals within your institution have stop work authority? Do individuals who are lower in the hierarchy at your institution also have stop work authority? So inequities in working conditions must be addressed if occupational injuries and illnesses are to be prevented. So social justice in the workplace is demonstrated by health disparities and disproportionate representation for workers of color in the most hazardous jobs. All right, so right now during COVID, we have our building service workers who are majority workers of color, and they're out there cleaning our buildings. And many of these workers are also considered high risk as far as COVID is concerned. So they need to have a voice and a workplace democracy to know that they're going to be supported if they report a safety concern. So they need to have that stop work authority. Now let me kind of walk you through how this connects. All right, so we make sure our workers have a voice. We make sure that that workplace democracy is in place and they have stop work authority. So they're going to say something if they see an unsafe condition. So workers having a voice equals workers reporting unsafe conditions and those unsafe conditions being resolved. Now, workers reporting unsafe conditions also drives down injuries. So it reduces injuries on campus. And then from there, we say, okay, well, it also drives down our workers' comp claims. So workplace democracy equals decreased worker comp claims, and then it also equals reduced spending. So this speaks directly to the definition of EH&S that we talked about. We talked about people, we talked about environment, we talked about profits. So this is directly it. All right. So does social justice fall within the purview of EH&S? The answer is absolutely. We have all these pieces and we've shown how this falls within the purview of both sustainability and safety. But why is this important? Okay, it's important because both groups are needed in this discussion because sustainability can help us in identifying social injustices which might need correcting. But oftentimes, it's safety's expertise that are required in order to take steps to change things. So only, and a lot of times, only safety can take the conversation where it needs to go in order to pursue these changes. So only EH&S can give stop work authority at an institution. They're the ones who will be holding that. Also, hazardous waste considerations. I better plug in my laptop. Sorry about that, you guys. All right, so hazardous waste considerations. Sustainability may push us to look at the social justice and injustice, the impacts of our hazardous waste in higher ed, but it's EH&S that holds those waste contracts, that understands our waste management. So we need sustainability to help guide us, and we need safety because they are the holders of these programs. All right, so I think that we have gotten to the end of this talk. There's a ton of resources here. I was really hoping to be able to incorporate a little bit more from some work that Christina Griever and I are working on that is about making the research enterprise more sustainable and more equitable. But I see I'm almost out of time. I really appreciate everyone's time today. And if you have any questions, it looks like we have a few minutes. And also, please reach out to me. Here's my email address right here. Let's talk more about this. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much, Star. And I know we only have a couple of minutes, but we do have a couple of questions. So I'll go right to them. And if our audience has more questions, please do submit them. And maybe we'll stay a couple of minutes more depending on the amount of questions that we have. So going back to your promotional messaging, does a positive emotional response to a message or direction lead to more compliance?
I think it depends on the motivation, the motivational focus of the person that you're interfacing with. So for me, positive messaging makes all the difference. But that's not true for everyone. So that's why it's really important to understand who you're talking to and where you're coming from.
Thank you. So if you don't know what type of person you're trying to influence, for example, in the example with the fume hood, should you use multiple messaging approaches?
Yes. Yes, and this is exactly that. That is the heart of this talk. So if you're trying one thing and you are not getting the outcome that you desire, absolutely borrow from one another's messaging, because we don't care what messaging gets us there. We just need our desired outcome to be met.
And can you talk a little bit about safety professionals working in less progressive environments, how they can start incorporating some social justice into their workflow?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And, you know, especially for those of us who are in challenging cultures, like, so I'm in the South here, we have our own cultural challenges. First of all, whoever wrote that question, reach out to me. Let's have the longer version of this. But the quick answer is find your allies, even if you find one ally on your campus. And then I would use the entry point of environmental health, because you have all the right in the world to be practicing environmental health. That's what you were hired to do. So use that as your entry point and find an ally. So this is really about building your own team, even if it's not an official team at your campus.
Thank you so much, Star. I think we're actually at time, and you did a very short version of the Q&A, and I will not go to my ending slides, but wanted to remind everyone that we have weekly webinars, so please come back and join us for one of our future webinars. And also there is a online workshop on July 23rd that I also recommend you check out on the HE website. So thank you so much, Star. We got a couple of thank yous in the comments as well. People really enjoyed the presentation today. And if you have more questions, reach out to Star directly or to HE, and we'll get back to you. So thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.